Ramp raises $750 million at $44 billion valuation. The credit license inside the financing gives Ramp direct access to float that traditional card issuers still control. Banks serving small businesses must now match embedded lending rates or lose volume to the platform within 18 months. CFOs at Series B companies will see the first integrated loan offers appear on their dashboards by early next year. The valuation jump masks how quickly balance sheet economics move from interchange to origination fees. USA Rare Earth secures $1.6 billion CHIPS funding. Procurement teams at defense contractors can finally insert domestic sourcing requirements into new magnet contracts. That clause will appear in RFPs starting next fiscal year. Importers reliant on Chinese supply face higher compliance costs and potential delays when tariffs tighten. The CHIPS commitment shortens the timeline for a second U.S. processing facility by roughly 2 years. Existing rare earth traders lose their information advantage on pricing. Tech sector posts 38K May layoffs. Go-to-market and support functions drove most of the reductions. Product teams now operate with fewer customer-facing resources, which lengthens sales cycles for all but the largest deals. Vendors will push more self-serve onboarding and raise the minimum contract size where account managers remain assigned. Smaller startups still burning cash at 2022 rates will hit their next down round with worse terms. Gigabyte launches anniversary motherboards. The limited Infinity Edition creates a new price ceiling for AM5 motherboards. Asus and MSI must either launch matching flagship SKUs or watch their premium channel partners shift orders. Retailers will discount non-anniversary boards more aggressively to clear inventory before the new models arrive in volume. Expect the average selling price for high-end X870E boards to rise 12% within the first 2 quarters. AMD unveils Ryzen 7 7700X3D and RX 9070GRE. The 7700X3D lands at the exact price where pre-built gaming rigs still carry Intel CPUs. System integrators gain a drop-in swap that improves frame rates without touching BOM cost. Intel must either discount its remaining 14th gen stock further or accelerate its own cache-enhanced parts to defend share. The GRE card simultaneously pressures NVIDIA's 4060 Ti pricing in the channel. Mid-tier gaming margins tighten before the holiday build season. Intel ships Arc G3 chips for handhelds. Handheld makers now face a choice between discrete graphics and tighter integration. The G3 line ships with clock speeds that undercut last year's discrete options by 30% on power draw. That shifts the margin math for anyone building a sub-$600 deck. Expect Valve to test these in the next Steam Deck refresh cycle before committing silicon. Smaller builders will likely follow once the reference boards hit volume in 6 months. Qualcomm debuts Snapdragon C for budget laptops. Budget Windows devices just gained a credible ARM path under $400. Snapdragon C targets the segment Intel has largely ceded since the pandemic. The platform's integrated 5G changes the BOM for OEMs chasing emerging markets. This forces Intel to either cut its N-series pricing another 20% or watch share erode in education tenders by year-end. Lenovo and HP will likely pilot the new chips in their entry-level lines within the next 2 quarters to test thermal envelopes. Broadcom earnings miss weighs on tech stocks. Networking demand from the big cloud operators actually softened 2 quarters earlier than the numbers show. The earnings shortfall points to deferred orders rather than lost design wins. That leaves suppliers like Marvell exposed if the pause stretches into 2025. Cisco now has room to renegotiate component contracts before its own fiscal year closes. Smaller networking plays should brace for delayed payments as procurement teams reset budgets in the coming months. Amazon tops Fortune 500 ahead of Walmart. Retail buyers at the big box chains will cite the revenue crossover in every vendor meeting this quarter. Walmart's own private label push accelerates because third-party margins just got harder to defend. Expect more direct sourcing from Asia to close the gap before the next list resets. The shift also pressures Target and Costco to revisit their marketplace experiments before holiday planning locks in. MFIR raises $2.1 million for vulnerability patching. DevOps teams at mid-market SaaS companies just got a new option that bypasses the big security suites. MFIR's approach ties detection directly to patch deployment without the usual approval workflows. That compresses remediation windows from weeks to hours on open-source dependencies. Tenable now has to decide whether to acquire or build competing automation before its renewal cycle hits enterprise accounts next year. CrowdStrike customers in particular will see pressure to justify their higher per-seat costs once pilots prove out. Forage closes $40 million for benefits platform. Procurement officers at state level now face a hard migration window before 2025 budget reviews. The money targets the error correction layer that has long inflated administrative costs. Smaller vendors chasing the same deals will need to reveal their transaction failure rates or get dropped from the next RFP round that opens this fall. This shifts the competitive edge from fee pricing to reliability metrics that states can audit directly. Legacy system maintainers lose their renewal leverage once those metrics become public. Oxford Quantum Circuits raises £260 million. 2 additional fabrication lines come online before competitors can lock in their own European foundry deals. The real constraint is cooling infrastructure, not qubits. US labs will have to accelerate their own site selections or risk losing the next batch of government test contracts. European research consortia now face higher reservation fees for shared facilities through the end of next year. This timeline puts pressure on IBM and Google to finalize their UK partnerships sooner than planned. Paxini Tech eyes $1.48 billion Hong Kong IPO. The $1.48 billion valuation already prices in full commercial deployment of their tactile sensors across Asian factories. Hong Kong listing gives them access to capital that bypasses US export controls on advanced robotics components. Japanese automation suppliers must now decide whether to license the sensor tech or accelerate their own optical alternatives ahead of 2026 model cycles. Component makers in Shenzhen see their margins compress once Paxini starts direct procurement at scale. European distributors face pricing pressure by Q3 2025. GDIT plans up to 236 job cuts in Virginia. Pending contract outcomes mean the actual cuts could land right before the next recompete cycle opens. Smaller subcontractors lose their pipeline visibility and will start reallocating staff to commercial work instead. Local training programs for cleared personnel now see enrollment drop as word spreads about the reduced headcount targets. This leaves prime contractors with fewer options when staffing the follow-on phases that begin in 18 months. Clearance sponsorship budgets get cut first. Bid teams revise labor categories ahead of submissions. Meta eliminates 8,000 positions. Reality Labs hiring stays flat even as the rest of the company shrinks. Remaining engineering groups face stricter headcount justification for every open role. Ad tech rivals gain a window to poach specialists before internal mobility freezes take effect next quarter. Product roadmaps that depend on cross-team coordination will slip first. This accelerates the shift of resources toward AI infrastructure at the expense of consumer app experiments. Smaller startups in the metaverse space see their acquisition prices drop accordingly. Green Harvest raises $45 million for vertical farming. Saudi investors are betting that controlled environment yields can undercut imports from Europe within 2 years. The Series B terms reportedly include performance milestones tied to water efficiency, not just acreage. That structure shifts risk onto the founders if desalination costs spike. Existing Middle East produce distributors now face margin pressure as local output scales. Watch for accelerated consolidation among smaller farms unable to match the capex. Windows 11 Secure Boot expiry looms in June. Enterprises running mixed Windows fleets face a cascading upgrade wave once the certificates lapse. Hardware vendors gain leverage to bundle new devices with extended support contracts. Smaller IT departments without patch automation will default to mass replacements rather than risk boot failures. That timeline collides with existing PC refresh budgets already stretched from 2025 rollouts. Expect Dell and HP to front-load inventory builds in the first half. CHIPS Act advances multiple supply chain projects. Materials suppliers now receive direct incentives that bypass the foundry giants. This shortens qualification cycles for new photoresists and gases by roughly 12 months. Equipment makers must decide whether to co-locate service hubs near the subsidized sites or absorb higher logistics costs. Downstream, memory and logic producers gain faster access to domestic sources but lose some pricing power in negotiations. The shift quietly reduces reliance on Asian chemical monopolies over the next 3 years. Tech earnings disappoint amid market pullback. Guidance cuts on data center build-outs will ripple into component orders faster than revenue shortfalls alone suggest. CFOs at the largest cloud providers are already deferring orders for networking silicon into 2027. That pause hands breathing room to second-tier suppliers who missed the prior cycle. Enterprise software renewals face renewed scrutiny as IT budgets tighten in response. The pattern points to a slower hardware replacement cycle through the end of next year. COMPUTEX showcases new PC hardware lineup. Retail channel partners must now allocate shelf space across 3 competing socket standards simultaneously. Motherboard vendors gain short-term volume but absorb higher R&D amortization as each platform window narrows. Qualcomm's Snapdragon X refresh arrives into an already crowded launch quarter, limiting carrier bundle opportunities. Inventory buffers at distributors will likely swell by 15% before year-end clearances begin. The overlapping schedules compress the typical 6-month sales ramp into a single quarter for everyone involved.